Hello everybody and welcome to my Reaper kill guide for Vampire Survivors. I'm Icon and I'm going to give you a step-by-step tutorial how to kill this baddie. So this video is divided into three parts. The first part is the preparation, how to set it up. The second part is the execution, and the third part is I'm going to talk about the build that I personally consider ideal. So before we start with anything, two things. There's timestamps in the description box if you're looking for something specific or just the build that I prefer to use, you'll find it there. And the second thing, prepare to suffer if you want to go down this rabbit hole, because you will fail a couple of times before you will have your first Reaper kill, even if you are lucky, because there's just so many things that can go wrong, and so many things that you will ultimately have to fidget around until they work. I just want to have you warned that this is a long-term project. With that out of the way, let's get started. The first part of the video is the preparation. This is where we actually make it possible to kill the dude. To make it possible, you need two things. First off, the right items, and second off, a low level when he actually spawns, because the HP of your enemy are directly proportional to your character level. So to make him actually killable, in my humble opinion, you need to be as low level as possible, and that's what we're going to do here. We're playing in the library without Hyper with Zuor Clerici, the character which starts with a Holy Flask, increased AoE effects, and here comes the thing I didn't know before I did this. The AoE effect stays until you level up. So you'll lose the entirety of the AoE bonus once you're level 5. Level 3 is pretty much the sweet spot. What I did before starting to record this was leveling myself up until I had the Laurel and the Runetracer as items, because I personally consider them as pretty much the most reliable starts to get yourself to level to minute 30 at level 3. So let's get actually started. Once you have all these items and maxed out pretty much everything with the power-ups, you can get going. Two things though, don't max out Magnet and experience growth, because you don't want to loot experience crystals here if possible. We want to have a low as possible level, so these two stats are not desirable. Everything else on the power-up page is desirable. What I'm doing right now is roaming forward until I find an empty tome lying around. I don't know if you knew it, but if you roam long enough through the library, you will eventually find an empty tome lying around. That's the passive item which reduces cooldowns. I find this a very, very desirable item, and after many attempts of getting the job done properly, I have found out that this makes the run much more reliable to survive until minute 30. So getting the Laurel and the Runetracer at the beginning, by the way, is a pretty atrocious process of quitting and restarting. There's two things I want to add about this. First off, there's a green crystal that you can grab when you're starting this map, giving you one instant level up. And the other thing is, without the Laurel, you have a pretty decent chance that the Reaper will just outright one-shot you. When he spawns, we're still level 3, and there's no guarantee that the first couple of experience bubbles will provide us with the Laurel. So there's a decent chance that you make it all the way to minute 30 just to get one shot, because RNG just trolls you. So therefore, I rather suffer before minute 30, because the Laurel pretty much, when you have that, you're protected from this mostly, or at least you have enough time to level up and buy the other stuff to actually survive the dude. So here we are. There's the empty tome I was talking about. You pick it up, and this is now where we're going to stay. First off, I'm going to nail down a couple of baddies here before I go up there into this alcove, and this is where we're going to camp now. So when you stand somewhere here, this is what we're looking for. You want to be in touch with your Runetracer projectile at all times. While you're standing more or less in your projectile, you are protected by a wall of BS that's going to delete everything as long as your damage is high enough. I personally found that the sweet spot is while you're facing to the right side of the map and the hand of your character is somewhere between the grandfather clock and this map thingy. Two things. First off, you won't be able to sustain this without moving yourself. When you have to move, always move only a little bit, the tiniest little bit, until your Runetracer projectiles are wobbling again. And the second thing, when something like that happens, when an enemy roams on top of you, you can move a little bit inside your kill box, but you want to avoid to collect those XP crystals as much as possible. And that's the gist of it. Whenever you notice that your Runetracer projectiles aren't aligned anymore, wriggle a little bit around here in this alcove until they are again, because they will misalign at some point. That's because they're firing at enemies on the screen. There are some alignments that are outright horrible, and sometimes your cooldowns change and other things change. So, TLDR, move if necessary. If it looks like that, don't move at all. Only move if your projectiles are not aligned to yourself, and that's the basics about how to survive until minute 30. So here's the last few words. You will collect your loot by bosses roaming on top of you. Sometimes when bosses die in these corners of these bookshelves, the chests will be transported via black magic on top of your character. Most of the time the boss will just die on top of you. If not, there will be chests around the map. That can be bad, but most of the time this only means that your DPS is really good. And the second thing, this phase can fail, even though you did everything right. There's two reasons to that. You don't know what's in the chests, you need the chest upgrades, and if you're really unlucky and you only get Tome and Laurel upgrades, your DPS won't be high enough for the last phase. Sucks, but it happens. You can't really do anything about that. If that happens, restart and try again. You can, of course, try to run this build without the empty tome, but I made the experience that I die way more often than with the empty tome. That's because this item here reduces the cooldown of everything, which results in more projectiles shot. And the later you are in the game, the more vicious the enemies, and the more devastating it is when one salvo goes awry. With lower cooldowns, you can shoot more often, and it doesn't happen that often. Also, the empty tome gives you a quicker recharge on your Laurel shells, quicker flask drops. All in all, it's just a massive power-up. And you saw there that Mummy was almost deleting me. That's a very, very bad thing to happen. If that ever happens, that an enemy roams on top of you, try to roam a little bit downwards. I always try to align my character as close to the grandfather clock as possible, because this way I can roam a little bit downwards if something wants to delete me, to avoid it without touching the crystals. And that's all the tips I have for you. From this point on, just give your best to survive, and wait it out until it's minute 30. I'll do the same. I'll let this video continue, or this run continue off-cam, and I'll meet you once we are ready for the actual Reaper action. Okay, and we are now in the last minute, and I wanted to come back with a couple of thoughts to help you out in case you are in trouble getting this far. So first off, like I said, there is a failure chance. There is no such thing as a guaranteed victory here, and that's mostly because of two reasons. You have no control about what's in the chests, and this build is relatively vulnerable to bad drops. And basically, if you have a multi-drop in one of those chests, like a triple or a quintuple drop, you're in a pretty good spot. This run here has not a single drop, and this is also not the same run we started with. I had to restart because I died, and that was because I didn't have enough upgrades. So what's a helpful little trick there is you can run further after you have grabbed your first empty tome into the same direction, and you can grab multiples of that. This run, in the second time, I grabbed 3 of them before I hid in the alcove. And in this run so far, legit, not a single multi-drop. So you see here, I've been quite lucky though with the upgrades on the weapons, but this can break your run, and even though you did everything right, you might break it there. And apart from that, if you are standing there in that niche and you're getting deleted, try to learn to move accordingly. This is something I can't really give you a real proper readout. The only thing I can say to you, try to keep your character faced to the right side of the map, because that makes the Runetracers generally biased to travel into the right direction. Alright, so that's the end of the preparation phase. If you made it this far, congratulations! You've already cheesed the game in a terrible way, how dare you! So here comes part 2. This is the actual Reaper kill phase. Before I start, here's one thing. I can't promise to you that we're going to have an exploding Reaper on this video, because it's such a fickle thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There's a lot of things that I can't control in this procedure, so maybe he's not gonna die. But since this is the I don't know how many attempt of mine, I think we're already in the double digits, I'm going to make it like that. If the Reaper won't explode, I'm promising you to upload a video where it's actually going to explode on the same setup, without all that explanation beforehand. With that out of the way, let's get talking about the specifics. We're going to kill the Reaper with mostly the Laurel's invulnerability, the Clock Lancet's freeze, and the bouncy bullets from the Runetracer. That's like 90% of what we're going to do. We're going to pull this off at the same area here where we're fighting these baddies. We're just going to move ourselves over to the other side of the map board. I'm going to show you the exact position in a sec. First, I want to talk about what's going to happen when we now hit minute 30. So, minute 30, all the enemies disappear. You probably already know that. We are going to move a little bit downwards towards the crystals until the Reaper actually shows up. If you don't move at that point, he doesn't show up, and you need to move in this moment. Otherwise, you're hidden too well. And you're trying to move only as much as necessary to actually toggle him appearing, because I really don't know if the HP of this dude are being defined the moment he enters the screen or the moment the clock ticks 30. Feel free to leave me a comment if you actually know, because I have no way of determining, but whatever. So, as soon as that has happened, we're going to collect all these gems here, but this is only a tiny part of our total XP. Our total XP is hanging around somewhere off screen, left or right. So, we're going to go downstairs, trying to grab the Clock Lancet out of the first upgrades. If that's not possible, I'm going to strafe towards the chests, and I'm going to look for a red experience gem, because that's where all the experience from all those 18,000 slain monsters is actually condensed in, and then we're going to build the build. So, I'm explaining this all beforehand because there's going to be a lot of ruckus happening at once, and once I'm moving, I can't explain anymore. So, let's do it. Oh, now my game is acting up. Give me a sec. Alright, here we go. Let's do this. So the moment we hit 30, I start moving. I sadly leveled up myself. Like I said, I don't know if this is actually triggering the Reaper or not. Sometimes he's spawning right away, sometimes he doesn't. And now we're in the clear. So, first few level ups weren't too kind to us. And here you see we don't have a Clock Lancet in sight. I'm using my rerolls at this point because I'm running desperate, because we're going to die without the Clock Lancet, as you see here. This can't happen. This is actually one of the things which I said you're powerless against, and now we're roaming towards the chest, because the chest will give us an invulnerability boost for a second. And here we go. Yet another big power-up. Okay. And this is where the game can actually troll you yet again. Because as you saw there, we didn't get anything so far to defend ourselves, and there's a decent chance of the Reaper stabbing us here. So, please stay with me. It's going to be exciting. And it's always like that with him. You never know until you got the necessary items. Grabbing your chests makes you invulnerable for a brief moment, but alright, we got trolled by the run, so we're I saw where the gem dropped. It's down there, but I'm never going to make it alive. So sometimes this also happens, that you don't have any control about where the drops will spawn. So I'll pause this here, and we're going to retry this just so you see how it's pulled off correctly. I'm glad this happened, because this is also something you can't really control. So let's retry that in a minute. And there we are back with the next run. So this one was especially luckless. No, not a single chest with a multi-drop. And as you see here, this is how it can work. Runetracer level 3 is enough, and the holy flasks were pretty important. So for the next run, we're going to strive into this direction, and no second thoughts. That's what I did wrong the last time, and I'm going to show you how it works when you just go as fast as you can. So we're just waiting out here. The enemies, it's just like looking that crazy. So Reaper comes on in, and that's a pretty good start, I'd say. We have the Reaper here on this angle, and now we have to hope that we're going to either make it to this red crystal down there, or we'll be lucky and get our freeze item right away. So right now the game's trying to troll me with very, very undesirable items, but that's just what's to be expected. So as you see here, this can happen when you are extremely unlucky. So if you don't draw any clock Lancet at this point, this can happen that you will lose your only revive at this point. But now, once you made it to the red crystal, you can set up the build. I'm going to do this real quick, and then we're going to go slaughtering. Okay, so the build came together now, and that's what I have in the description box below as well. So I'm going to explain it in detail after this run, but to summarize the gist of it, this is maximized towards single target damage, long freezes, long shields, and often shield myself often, and long-lasting and massive Runetracer projectiles. Okay, once you have all this together, move on over there and wait until the Reaper is unfrozen one more time. Oh, well, we can grab those chests real quick to upgrade our weapons. If you have leftover chests, use them, so you can get those evolved weapons. They add in some damage. The most important part is now that you wait until the dude is down below the table before you go upwards. Otherwise, you can be unlucky and lock him up in this corner, and that's bad. You are working on a budget here. Time is of essence. After another minute, another Reaper spawns, and so on and so forth. And the more Reapers there are on the screen, the less likely your kill will get. So here, at this point, your sweet spot you're aiming for is somewhere like here. It's hard to discern, but the hand of Clerici should be somewhere in alignment with the bronze dot of the map board there. You see it on this side. It has one of these there. Or a little bit before the chair comes. What's really, really important is at this point, two things. Keep your tracer projectiles aligned in one straight line as good as you can, and don't stand too close to the map. If you do, the Reaper can stand on top of you and evade 90% of the projectiles, and lots of your damage just evaporates. Keep your character closer to the table to mitigate that, and that's that. There isn't more to that. You just stand now still and pray to RNGesus that, first of all, this guy just squickle in a way that you actually hit him as much as you can, and you just try to get as many projectiles into the corridor as possible. Optimizing this is a science for itself, and I can only say, when you have a sweet spot where your damage numbers look like this, crazy, move as little as possible. Even if he unfreezes, press your thumbs, wish yourself good luck, and don't move. Because you're going to ruin it. And then, well, let's hope we're going to see an exploding Reaper this time, shall we? At this point, it is entirely luck-based if it happens or not. So if you don't manage it at the first time, if you made it this far and it looks somewhat like that, you just gotta keep going until it finally happens. And that's pretty much how you kill a Reaper. So let's hope and wait until we see if this one is a failure or not. And then we're going to talk about the build a little bit more in detail. Or, you know what, we're going to start right away with the third part, because, you know, now, well, he's either going to explode or not. But that's not the point of this video anymore. Hey, we got it, my friends. That's how you pop a Reaper. Thank you, video. It only took me around 30 to 40 hours to get until this point. So let's talk about the build, shall we? So the build here is the most reliable that I've found so far. We have this flask, you can't change it, it's just what you start with. The Laurel and the Clock Lancet, I think you already got the point why these items are absolutely inevitable. The Runetracer is your major damage source, and the daggers and the wand, I personally prefer them because they are the most single target damage oriented weapons in the game, but seriously, these two slots are not defining. I personally think your chance to kill the dude increases with every one of these items, but that's just me. With those passives down here, I have a much more fond opinion of a couple of these. So the Spellbinder and the Empty Tome I personally consider as mandatory, because Spellbinder gives you more shields, and Empty Tome gives you more shields, and Spellbinder lets them last longer. This is a really, really good combo, and both of these items synergize with your main damage thingy. So more tracer projectiles, longer lasting tracer projectiles, there's nothing to not like about that. Also, I think it should increase the freeze time. I'm not sure about that though. Spinach and Candelabrador and the Duplicator are just for the damage. Like 50% more damage, more AoE, bigger tracer projectiles. I think you saw what happens there. Duplicator, more projectiles. I think that all goes without saying. The Bracer is the last thing that I want to talk about, because I think that's the most exchangeable part. It makes projectiles faster, so it increases your damage vastly. But if you have a moment like I did here, and you're out of revivals and you're nervous, you could insert a revive item or whatever you think is a good thing. I personally think the Bracer is the least necessary item, but I'm not sure about that one. So that's pretty much it. There's not much more to say about it. I thank you so much for your time, and if you go down this rabbit hole, take yourself some patience and keep trying, and you will ultimately get it done. So leave me your comments down below if you have other methods, or if you have something to say about that. I'd be more than eager to hear that. Leave me a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and of course consider subscribing. My channel has daily videos, and I'm also streaming on Twitch. You see that in the description box below. I'd be happy to see you guys there as well. So have a good one, and happy Reaper slaying, everybody. Bye bye.